Welcome back to the Couch Thing. Today we're going to talk about the classic film Groundhog Day, starring Bill Murray. Now, the first thing you need to know about Groundhog Day is that Albert Camus was one of, if not the most important existentialist philosophers of the 20th century. Camus is sometimes overshadowed by his contemporary Jean-Paul Sartre, but honestly, it's unfair. I think it's just that Sartre's writing was so dense that everyone assumes it's very important. Camus, however, had much more to say about the human experience and life. Camus' most important work is a long essay called The Myth of Sisyphus. Now, for those of you who may not be aware, Sisyphus was cursed by the gods. He spent the entirety of every day rolling a massive boulder up a hill, and every night the boulder would roll back down to the bottom of the hill, and he'd spend the next day rolling it back up. Rinse, repeat, forever. So Camus uses Sisyphus as a metaphor for humanity. We spend every day completing tasks, sometimes repetitive, often boring, meaningless tasks. Camus argues that since there is no God and there is no afterlife, mostly everything we do, all of these tasks that we do every day, are completely meaningless. There's no real point to it. I mean, beyond eating so that you don't die, beyond maybe escaping a tiger so that you don't die, none of it's actually for anything. You'll work all day at a job that you probably hate, and at the end of the day, you'll go to bed, and the next morning, well, the boulder's back at the bottom of the hill, and you have to start pushing it back up again forever. And the respite? At the end of it all, you die. And there's nothing after death. And the icing on top of that cake is, in a couple of generations, you'll be completely forgotten. No one will even know that you were here. It's just absurd. Completely absurd. And at this point, you're probably wondering, what the hell does any of this have to do with a 90s era rom-com starring Bill Murray? Well, the answer is pretty much everything. Bill is our everyman of sorts. He plays a weatherman named Phil Connors, who's sent to a place called Punxsutawney to report on Groundhog Day, of all things. He has a pretty crappy day, doesn't like it, goes to bed, wakes up the next morning on the same day. He's caught in a time loop. You've seen a few time loop movies by now, honestly. They're pretty popular and usually not too great. But what Phil does is he lives the same day over and over. You might ask yourself, why doesn't he kill himself? Which is a great question. It's actually Camus' main question. Given the absurdity and meaningless of our existence, why don't we all kill ourselves? And we'll get back to that. So Phil initially just wants to get out of the time loop, right? He actually does try to kill himself, but we'll gloss over that. Let's just elide that for a moment. I'm thinking that it will get him out, but it won't. And he's looking for ways to get that day to not start over, and it takes quite some time before he can accept that there's no way out. He's just stuck in this. So what's he do? Well, first, he decides to just have fun with it. He can do whatever he wants. There are no repercussions. If he gets arrested and goes to jail the next morning, he wakes back up in his hotel bed. He has a golden ticket to fuck around forever and never find out. And so for a while, that's what he does. It's great fun. And eventually, even that becomes empty, meaningless, boring. There's no point in just having fun. So Phil does the next thing. He decides to learn things. He's got all of the time in the world. So he learns to play piano. And he learns to sculpt. He picks up lots of skills. And for a time, that's enough. That gives him a sense of accomplishment. He feels like he's doing something. He's getting enjoyment from it. And eventually, even that is not enough. Sure, he can learn another skill, but it's exactly the same as the process of learning all of the earlier skills. So what is he to do at this point? Phil finds a new plan. He starts focusing on others. He does little things to make this day better for the people around him. Whether it's rescuing someone's cat from a tree, or making sure someone doesn't step in that cold puddle, or trying to keep a homeless man from freezing to death overnight. He just takes a little bit of himself and gives it to everyone else. That's where he begins to find some meaning. Now, back up for a second and understand that, yeah, it's a Hollywood movie, and yeah, it's a rom-com. So we have to have this easy-to-understand ending. Phil has to get the girl, and the time loop has to end so that audiences can cheer. But there was no need of that. None at all. Phil could have finished in the time loop simply using every repetition of the day to be a better person. And to find a little freedom in doing that, quite honestly. And that's kind of what Camus got at. You embrace the absurdity. You understand that there's no meaning. But you also understand that you're free. You're completely free to create your own meaning. Camus says that we must imagine Sisyphus happy, but for myself, I prefer to imagine Phil Connors happy. Anyway, if you like the dumb stuff I'm doing here on my couch, if you're seeing this on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button. If you're seeing it on Patreon, you could throw me $1 or $2 so that I can do a bunch of these. And either way, visit thiscouchthing.com. I write about a lot of dumb stuff. And you can also find us on Facebook. So have a great day, folks.